Hello and welcome to So Many Games, independent video game coverage from a passionate group of people. Please check out everything we do at somanygames.co.uk. My name is Jason, and for episode 19 of the podcast, we speak with producer Lukáš from Amanita Design on their latest game, Phonopolis. In our chat, we cover Lukáš's early career before we learn more on Phonopolis' development from its oppressive narrative design, the stop-motion cardboard visuals, and its original puzzles. We even managed to surprise Lukáš with a message from one of our patrons. But before we get to the interview, I'd like to ask that if you enjoyed this podcast, we would really appreciate a glorious 5-star rating and review on your preferred platform. It would really help with our discoverability and getting the pod in front of as many people as possible. Also, please tell anyone you think that would be interested in our podcast or our work. We would really appreciate it. But without further ado, let's jump into my conversation with Lukáš on Phonopolis.
I'm Lukáš, and I've been with Amanita for 9 or so years at this point. And I originally joined for the usual mix of like PR, marketing, socials, all that stuff. But over the years, it's become more like production role, and that was basically my main role on Phonopolis for the past 3 or so years. And I was basically deployed into the team to sort of help the team get through the finish line and sort of help a little with the organization of work and looking over tasks and all that. We started having regular meetings, for example, which wasn't really the case before that. And I think that helped a lot because everybody suddenly have a much better idea of what other people are doing and all that. Yeah, we also got a whiteboard, which is pretty old school, I guess. But it was nice to have this visible, sort of tangible set of tasks. Was basically this. And I also got to, which I'm very grateful for, I got to touch little tiny bit of work in Unity as well, which is the engine that we developed the game in. No coding at all, but I helped a little with like basic stuff. I don't know, moving some colliders around, setting the sizes, like clickable objects. Also helped a little with the gamepad controls, gamepad vibrations, and also implementing the localization, because this is our first game that includes any sort of comprehensible dialogue, actual sentences that people can understand, and we decided to translate the game into 18 or 19 languages. So deploying all that.
So basically a little bit of a odd job man, basically fingers in everything.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, and always love a whiteboard. I'll always support a whiteboard follower. We use one in my house. I don't know what we would have done without it beforehand.
Yeah, I think so. It's like a very simple thing, and you might really think it's like old school and you could do all that digitally and more efficiently or whatever. But I think it really just helps on like some such strange primal level or whatever to just really write it on the whiteboard and have everybody look at it. I don't know, makes it different.
It's physical, it's not a screen. Yeah. It's not Slack or something like that. It's a beautiful analog thing, and I think that's why we love it so much.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little journey? I think you've already said it actually. Like on how you joined the studio and like what you got up to before you joined the studio.
Yeah, before the studio, I've always been very interested in games. I think I've been playing games all my life, basically, thanks to my parents being like very games positive. There were always games in our household. I remember my dad had an old Amiga computer, still have some like fuzzy memories of that, especially the soundtracks. The Amiga sound chip is like epic, amazing. Mm-hmm. And we also had a Game Boy and some emulators of like old consoles, so that gave me the proper Nintendo education. I love Nintendo games to this day. So I've been around games all my life, and at around the age of 14, 15 or so, I sort of randomly, I can't even remember how exactly that happened, but I got in touch with an editor-in-chief of one website in Czechia. There was like a magazine about console games primarily. It's quite established nowadays, but back then it was a new thing, and they were really just happy to have any writers, really. So they were okay with like a completely new young guy, being willing to write for them. And I think, yeah, the first thing that I sort of wrote for them was a review of some Naruto game for Xbox 360. Yeah, and that's where I sort of started, sort of more. Well, I can't really say professionally start working in games, but it was like the beginning of the journey. And I was doing that for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, maybe something like that. Then I was able to also to write for like an actual printed magazine. It's also well established in Czechia. It's called Level, and we established a radio show about games with my friend while working for another website magazine, which I left a few years afterwards because I was just swamped with work at Amanita. It was sometime around when we were releasing Chuchel, around 2018. And yeah, that was what I did for games. It was never really full time, all this like journalism stuff. My full time job before Amanita was basically working in some PR agencies for like corporate clients, which was a much different job than what I do in Amanita. But it was a good sort of training, I guess, getting to see a different sort of a part of businesses and cultures and all that. And it's definitely interesting to do PR work for clients like Vodafone or Google. The Czech Google was fun, but not as cool as games in my opinion.
I think this has come from, you mentioned about the radio show. Once one of my patrons heard that I was speaking to you, he sent me a message. His name's Ruz, and they wanted you to know that they still enjoy the jingle you made for the Lootbox podcast to this day.
Oh my god! I think I know who this is because I know. I know. Might be David or Tomáš, perhaps. And they have a Discord server because they also do like a little podcast about games. They have a Discord server, and I think I can remember mentioning them so many games. They're listeners of your podcast, so yeah, might be one of them. That's really nice.
So he just wanted you to know that there's people in the So Many Games community that still enjoy your earlier work for the podcast.
That's sweet.
So moving on to Phonopolis, what was the spark behind the game? What was it about the idea that propelled the team to make the game?
The game Phonopolis, the project was conceived by the sort of creative trio, which consists of Petr Filipovic, Eva Markova, and Otto Dostal, who were like longtime friends and former schoolmates from the animation in the city of Zlín. And they had an interest in games for a while, and they were also big fans of Amanita back then, which is important to the story. I remember they mentioned that when Machinarium came out in 2009, they were still in college, and it had a pretty huge impact on them. And that's sort of when they maybe realized that this could be the way to do it, to do games, because like it looks really good and it plays really well, and it also has this like potential to go worldwide and all that. I think that played a massive part in why they even decided to get into games. Yeah, I think they also wanted to get into games because originally they are animators. They liked about games that maybe it gives them a little bit more creative freedom in a way, a little bit more control, and also it's the interactivity. And Phonopolis specifically, they in terms of like visual inspirations and like what sparked the ideas for this totalitarian city ruled by this authoritarian leader. It was the interwar avant-garde movements, like artistic movements, like Russian constructivism, for example. I think it's very visible on the visual style of Phonopolis. as well as suprematism or futurism. So those were very, very important. And in terms of the story, we have used, I would say 2 books as like the most obvious references would be Orwell's 1984 and Zamyatin's We. But they are obviously very like, serious works. But in our case, we took it slightly, it's hard to put it into words because like it's still like a very serious sort of dark mood, dark theme in the game. Yeah, but we wanted to approach it basically a little bit more playfully, keep the lightheartedness of Amanita Design games, not to go too deep or too dark. So there's maybe this little contrast between the dark topic and the playfulness of the puzzles, and maybe a little bit of humor and absurdity. Yeah, maybe this contrast is one of the things that make it work.
Yeah, I get that. Because when you look at the game, it does look quite playful. The colors make it look a bit joyous, really. But yeah, when you start to delve into the game and the narrative that it's telling you, yeah, it's a very interesting mixture of that.
Yeah, I think it seems to work. Like people who want to sort of dive deeper into the narrative themes of the game, they will hopefully get what they want from it. But at the same time, if you're not that interested in the topic or the themes or the story it wants to tell, it still gives you the I guess, the experience that you would expect from an Amanita design game. So being able to touch a lot of things on the screen and just be able to play play with the game and play with the city.
Yeah, because it obviously touches upon dictatorship in the narrative, and about this leader who wants to pass his power onto everybody else and be in charge and make sure that all the citizens are doing what he wants them to do through these megaphones, which I thought was a really cool idea of trying to pass that information or brainwashing these people into that kind of thing. So, like, why tell this story? Why tell it in the way that they told it?
It's a good question. I think maybe I'm not speaking for the creators right now. More like my own opinion, but I would guess that the historical experience of Czechia and formerly Czechoslovakia may have played a role, because we're a country that was under totalitarian rule for a long time, for a few decades. And while most of us were not even born yet or were really young when the totalitarian regime fell, which is, how long has it been? Almost 40 years now. There are still some leftovers of what it did to the society. It takes a long time for people to recover. May take a few generations. So I think that might have been one of the main reasons to go for it. And having only experienced it like very shortly, or just the end of this era, maybe we don't. I don't know. Yeah, I don't want to say that we don't take it that seriously, but we've only seen a little bit of how the period actually was. Maybe that's also why there's this lightheartedness to it, as we've mostly been witnesses to the remnants of this past.
Yeah, for me, it was an interesting subject to delve into, and kind of obviously we've known dictatorships in the past. There's been plenty of them in many countries, but it's still quite a fascinating. Well, I wouldn't say it's fascinating. It's not really a great thing, is it? But it's good that the game explored this subject, I guess, and made it more of an eye opener for people that may not have completely understood what dictatorship is, or what kind of goes with it.
Yeah, I think it's never a bad idea to remind people about this kind of stuff, even if the story doesn't go that deep with it, like some of the books I mentioned would go. Yeah, I think it's definitely good to let people know, and remind them that this can happen anytime, really, and we see it happening in the world. Maybe it's always happening in the world. some places, obviously. Is yeah, we shouldn't. Yeah, we should keep our eyes open, I think.
It's a shame that we can't end these dictatorships in real life in the way that it ends in Phonopolis.
Oh yeah,
That'd be cool.
yeah, it would be nice if you could just use your headphones to filter it all out.
Yeah, exactly. But obviously, we've mentioned like the game's got this good mixture of like joy and dark. And one of the joy parts of the game for me was like the narration of Felix and what he's doing and things like that. I really think that was a really magical inclusion in the game, because I don't think that it would have the same kind of feeling if it was just like normal text boxes or anything like that. But what was the history of the narration in the game? Was it something that was always in the game, or was it something that was kind of added in as time went by?
Yeah, as far as I know, it was the intention to have the voiceover in the game since the very beginning. There was like an actual script from like a pretty early phase of the game, although obviously it went through some iterations over the years. But yeah, that was always this idea to have some kind of narrator in the game. But we only chose the person 3 or so years ago. It wasn't that long ago. And by a happy little accident, really, it happened to be Joe Etchison, who is better known probably by his stage name, Hidden Orchestra. So he's primarily a musician. We noticed when he did a little making of video about the music for Creeks, he composed music for another game of ours called Creeks in 2020. But he did this little making of video about the music, and he narrated it with his voice. And since then, we sort of kept him in mind, I guess, because he seemed to have this really sort of pleasant, narrative British voice that we liked. And yeah, once we started looking for a person who would do all the voiceovers for Phonopolis, we reached out to him, and we were happy that he was into it. After just really a small number of tests, I think it clicked really well, and we never really thought about having anyone else for the job. And I think Joe, it was really cool that Joe very quickly, basically immediately understood the intended tone of the narration, that it's not really supposed to be like a dark or grim, super serious story. But we gave him this little instruction that he understood perfectly, and was like, imagine being like a grandparent at a campfire telling a little story to your grandchildren. I think he got it really well.
Yeah, it was always a joy when he was speaking on the game.
Yeah, I also liked what he did with the, because obviously like most of the game, all of the game really is told from the perspective from Felix. It's like a retrospective, even though it wasn't primarily intentional, I think, to have like different voices for some of the other characters, which is like the three elder guys, and at the end there's also the leader speaking. We weren't really thinking, as far as I can remember, about them having different voices, but Joe gave it a try, and I think he did a really cool job. I think especially with the leader, it was pretty hard for me to imagine how he would sound, but the way he made him sound really like psychotic and like just uncomfortable to me, I would say. I think he hit that pretty well.
Yeah, I was surprised when I heard the leader. Yeah, I took him a bit like a Wario. He behaved a bit like Wario would in that situation. But yeah, he did such a great job. He really set the atmosphere of the game for me, and yeah, it did feel a little bit like storybooky because he did the voices for the other characters as well. He didn't do the singing though, did he?
No, no. The singing was done by an actual opera singer, sopranist from Czechia. Her name is Kristýna Kůstková. She's a friend of Floex, Tomáš Dvořák, who is the music composer on the game, and yeah, they got together to work on the singing part of the game, and she's basically in the role of Rachel.
Yeah, she's got a beautiful voice.
She really does. Yeah, it was amazing. Really, yeah.
Like one of the biggest things of the game is the visuals and the fact that one of the reasons why the game took so long to make was for this cardboard like stop motion type system that they decided to use for the visuals. And I'll always take my hat off to anybody that decides to do stop motion, especially with cardboard, because it must be a real big process to do. I mean, and like Phonopolis is not a big game. It's what, 2 or 3 hours, is it?
Yeah, I would say more like 3 to 4 something.
3 to 4.
Yeah.
But even so, that's still, when you compare it to some other games, still quite a small game. And the fact that it still took them, 13 years?
Yeah, pretty much like more like 10 years in reality, because the project was sort of conceived even before the team joined Amanita. So like between 2013 to 2016, they did mostly like prototypes and a lot of the script. That's true. But when they joined Amanita, like the actual game was, I don't want to say like completely restarted, but yeah, basically restarted development. So 10 or so years. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just crazy to me. But do you know why? Why did they decide to do this way?
There's a few reasons. One of them is a pretty simple one. In fact, they would tell you that they wanted to take a break from working on the computer all the time.
Fair enough.
Which is a fair point. Although in reality, it only saved them maybe 1 or 2% of computer work. Like they still had to do a lot of the work digitally in the engine, and also like digitally processing the handmade materials, and also really just the different sort of texture that working with a physical material gives you. It would be really hard, maybe not impossible, but really, really hard and complicated to achieve the same effect with like digital tools. And at the end of the day, it feels funny to say it when the game took 10 years to develop, but it's ultimately easier to do it in this analog way than try to replicate the texture of cardboard and all the imperfections that you apply with like sanding it with sandpaper. That would be a real pain to try to replicate it digitally. So yeah, that's another reason why. And also, yeah, since the core team is like artists and animators, I think that we're really just looking for a way to make their game stand out and find a different sort of aesthetic and art style. Yeah, aesthetic really. That's maybe not been done before, which, as far as I know, it hasn't been done this way before. Like, obviously, I know about games that have utilized paper more heavily or less heavily. For example, one of my favorite examples would be the game Luminosity, which is, I'm not sure when it came out, but definitely more than 10 years ago, that employed a very different technique, which, funnily enough, was also considered for Phonopolis, like, sequencing photos of like the actual, sets. Luminosity had the entire city glued together in like a big room and took many, many photos of it. And that was also the first idea for like, how to make Phonopolis. But the team found out that even though you can make it really pretty, beautiful this way, Luminosity is a beautiful game, it limits the interactivity a lot. And that was also one of the reasons why they chose this specific way of like, doing 3D models in Unity and basically texturing them with these, cut out hand painted textures that would be hand painted and sanded with sandpaper and photographed, and then digitally processed and adjusted, and then slapped on the 3D models in Unity.
Yeah, I mean, there was plenty of times that I just kind of stopped playing just to appreciate the work that had gone into this side of the game. Like, it was always something going on. The city felt really alive because of the detail that had been included. And knowing this was all like made from physical stuff kind of just made me appreciate even more, and there was always, You know, like I said, there was always either something to watch or something to do. You could click on all the different speakers and like set off a little scenario with certain characters, and they would grumble and moan or whatever they're doing as they were doing it. But it just felt so alive and so just, I don't know, I've just never seen visuals like it. It was so just beautiful to look at.
Yeah, I'm really happy to hear that. Because also, yeah, one of the reasons why I think we went for this sort of creative approach method was to sort of support and elevate this feeling of like tangibility. Yeah, and this the tactile feeling of it all. I think that's really important for the game, that you kind of feel like you can sort of touch it. You know, it's still just a thing on screen at the end of the day, but maybe there's this little thing in your head that makes you feel like, oh, this is like a real object, like something that would be a real toy in a real world, like physical toy. And yeah, I think that's nice.
Do you know like how long it would take them to do one section of a game? So like one, you know, you've got obviously different parts of the city, or like, you know, like when Felix goes to the woman's house, for example, that whole section there, and that puzzle scenario. Like how long would that take? Not as in playing it, but making it.
Varies level from level. Some would be a little less complex, would be more complex, but ultimately the like physical work and doing the cardboard stuff and hand painting it was not as time consuming as doing all the animations and processing the visuals digitally. Because one of the craziest thing about Phonopolis would be that there's almost no recycling of assets throughout the game. Like normally or usually a game would have, you know, a main character animated in some way, and that would be used throughout the game with some, you know, unique, you know, situations and all that. But in Phonopolis, which consists of like 60 or so screens, something like that, not sure about the exact number, the character animation for Felix, who's the main character, was always done from scratch. So, like, put it like very simply, it's like developing, you know, a little game by itself for each of these levels, which is completely insane. I don't think we're going to do that again in the future, but that's definitely one of the reasons why it took so long. So some screens, some levels would easily take months and months. Even in terms of coding and programming, some were pretty complex because there's like, yeah, sometimes it might not seem that way, but there's often very large number of like combinations and situations that can happen, which also adds to the complexity of animations. Like there's a crazy number of animations. So I would say mostly the animation work is perhaps why it such a long time.
All the characters have this kind of like fluid movement, you know, very cartoonish fluid movement to them. And I thought that was really impressive as well, considering I knew like how it was made. So I can kind of understand why that side of the game probably took so long. But it was definitely worth doing and spending that time on, because it did really give another edge to the game that without it, I don't think would have worked as well.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Really good to hear. I still feel like it could have been done a little more efficiently. But yeah, it's good that we learned our lessons through the development.
Yeah. As we take a little break from the interview, I would just like to mention our Patreon. If you would like to support us, this would be the best way to do it. With just 2 tiers to choose from and a host of benefits waiting, it's the perfect time to join in. From early access to our work to a chance to write an article for the newsletter, we hope there is something there for everyone. With our lowest tier at £1 and our top at £4.50, we hope we've made our Patreon as accessible as possible. A massive thank you goes out to our current patrons, John, Ruz, Keris, Antonia, Shy Guy, Brian, Opera Queen and Y. You guys rule, and we're incredibly lucky to have your support. Please check patreon.com/so-many-games to see everything we have to offer. A link can be found in the show description. With that said, let's get you back to the interview. We mentioned about the colours and like the colour palette as well of the game, and the colours that you chose to use also really kind of helped set this like unique atmosphere, I guess, of the game. And I just wondered if that was kind of like a challenging thing for the team to choose the colour palette of the game, or was it, quite an easy thing to settle on?
Yeah, I don't think I can answer this like as well as I would like to, but I know for a fact that since the beginning the intention was to have a pretty limited color palette to make things stand out and make the, for example, like interactable objects to make them clear. Also with like you've definitely noticed in the game, like almost all interactive objects have these little, what are they called? Little targets, basically black and white targets, that also help like telling the player what's interactive and what's not. We wanted to make sure to as large extent as we could to sort of streamline the game in a way that we didn't want the player to get lost in what's interactive and what's not, or which may happen in like this genre of game. When adventure games are often famous for being a little cryptic, where you're supposed to go and all that, and we sort of wanted to eliminate that from our games. But yeah, since I'm not an artist, I'm not I can't comment that deeply on the choice of color palette. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, you brought up those little like knobs, if you like that, to show what was interactive or not. And that's actually quite interesting, because it did make me feel like it was a more physical thing as well. That was actually built onto a building or built onto the object, and that I was physically moving the object, instead of it just being some kind of like just put on there like a sticker or something. So it definitely had a double thing going on there, like where you say it showed the player what was interactive and what wasn't, but also made it feel so much more real. And that was really cool as a player as well.
Yeah, that's also really really nice to hear. Yeah, that was also one of the intentions. I think I sort of mentioned it before, with like the intention to go for the tactile feeling and making the world feel like, as physical as possible, and a place that is obviously like just a little cardboard model in a way, but still make it feel like something that could potentially exist somehow. Yeah.
And obviously that leads into the puzzles of the game. That the puzzles, that being the big gameplay part of it. And some of those puzzles, were quite crafty, I'd say. But they were really enjoyable puzzles for the most part. Very original. I don't think I played a game that had such a way of looking at puzzles and how to solve them. And it's a striking feature. Do you know what was the process of the puzzle design of the game? And why did they choose the style of puzzles that they chose?
I would say it was all coming from this desire to make the game, or like these puzzle parts of the game, to make them feel like toys, make them feel like mechanical objects that you would not just want to solve and put them away and just feel like, yeah, I solved a problem, I solved a challenge, but to make you feel like you played with something, like you would really play with a toy when you were a kid, just examining it and exploring what it can do, what it can't do, and what interacts with another thing and all that. So that was the main sort of driving force behind designing, if not all of the puzzles, then the vast majority of the puzzles. Sometimes you would get inspired by like geometric shape, for example, very simple thing. But I think that one of those examples would be the cooking machine level, where you create the little pudding and put the cherry on top and all that. And that really came from looking at geometric objects and figuring out what sort of options and possibilities would give you in terms of designing the puzzle. Yeah, but mostly the desire to make like digital interactive toys that would resemble mechanical real world objects as much as possible.
That cooking puzzle, Lucas. Yeah, I spent way too much time.
But did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy it? That's the important thing.
I enjoyed it once I figured it out. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Not too much frustration, I hope.
No, and that was the thing about the puzzles. Like, I mean, I can play puzzle games, and what they're asking me to do, and I don't understand it, and yeah, that can lead to frustration. But I never felt that more. Maybe slightly, but it wasn't a deep frustration with the puzzles of Phonopolis, because you can see the answers are there. You've just got to try and piece it together and kind of play with that mechanics, and until you either stumble across it or you kind of figure it out. And I think that's one of the things that I really appreciated about the puzzle design of the game, was that it didn't really frustrate. It just made you want to figure it out more because of the way it was designed. And especially that cooking one, yes, it was crafty, and it did take me longer than I think it should have took me to figure it out. But then once the pieces clicked, it was so much fun to see it come together.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it was that put a cherry on top of the souffle thing before you send it off. It was like, yeah, nice. Yeah, I like that. Nice touch.
Oh yeah, that's cool. I think it can be a little bit risky with these types of puzzles, because usually players would probably expect to have at least a little bit of idea about what they're supposed to achieve or what's the goal of this puzzle, which can sometimes be difficult to read in Phonopolis, I guess, for many players. And we saw that a few times during playtesting as well. Playtesting helped us a lot polish some of these puzzles. Like, we didn't make like drastic changes really, but sometimes we realized that there's like a little too much stuff at the same time, and did some sort of splitting some of the scenes or some of the puzzles into like little stages. So first you would have a set of options or set of objects that you can interact with. For example, the level with the pencil house, where you are going for the wrench. So that was a very good example of this, I think, because in one of the early iterations of the level, you would basically have all the things that you can do in the level. You would be able to do them all at once, and it was just way too much for people to even figure out what they are supposed to do. And I think, playtesting helped us a ton with sort of seeing where to put like little milestones or whatever, and sort of split the entire puzzle into 2 or 3 stages, you could say. And suddenly it was much more fun for everyone, because there was still this appeal, or this possibility to try how things work and be able to push the little buttons and see what they do, but it wasn't like overwhelming.
Yeah. Did the team ever dabble in putting like a hint system into the game?
There is one, like a subtle one, I would say. We had plenty of discussions about it, because, for example, some of our older games, like Machinarium or Summer's 3, they would have an actual like walkthrough book implemented into them that you can unlock by playing a little mini game. So we sort of assumed it maybe Amanita fans expect this from our games. But maybe due to the more narrative nature of the game, we felt like it might break up pace. So we sort of didn't want the players to be stuck on the screens for like too long, be stuck on one puzzle for like 30 minutes or whatever. So break up the pacing a little. So yeah, we still kept the complexity of some of the puzzles. We didn't want the game to be too easy. It was really a tough balancing act in a way to sort of keep players engaged and keep the solutions to the puzzle satisfying, keep the playing around with the things satisfying while not, being frustrating or something like that. So it's, yeah, took a lot of balancing.
And obviously, we said how physical the game is, especially with its puzzles. But there was the other side of the puzzles as well, where you had the more kind of like puzzles, if that makes sense. Where you've got the moving shapes, and you've kind of got to put them redirect their trajectory into another direction, or even kind of change the shape of them. Those kind of puzzles. I think in some ways I kind of enjoyed those puzzles more than I did the main physical puzzles. It made for a nice break from the other puzzles too. Was that the idea of putting them into the game to have that break, or was there another reason?
Yeah, pretty much. To offer some variability, the game. It also made sense to have something more readable and more like normally puzzly in these parts of the game, because mostly these puzzles that you were talking about were used to sort of unlock the elevator to the next part of the city. And yeah, it just felt like it made sense for these places to have something a little more, yeah, normal, I would say, than like rearranging houses or anything like that. So yeah, that was basically the idea behind it. And we also wanted to make sure that it feels like it's also physical in a way, even though the thing literally happens on some sort of a display within the game. I mean, it still retains this like cardboard and paper aesthetic. So it's like a computer screen or a monitor made of cardboard with digital shapes, but they're also all made of cardboard. So yeah, we wanted to maintain this feeling in these puzzly puzzles as well. And I think what also helped them a lot was the sound design that came in pretty late in the development, not that far from release actually, but it made it much more fun to interact with, I think.
No, the sound design was also really, really interesting in the game. The way in which in which the game utilized it. Yeah, it definitely made the experience much more original and interesting. I kind of think of the prison. When you escape prison, and you've got to kind of do that puzzle. When you get it right, and then Felix is kind of like trying to walk the path that you set, and then you've got the sound happening with that, and as an example, it was really, really, really cool.
Yeah, I remember first hearing that part. I really liked it. It's just such a small little detail, but the satisfaction it gives you when the path becomes gold and there's this little jingle. It's yeah, really nice.
Yeah, definitely. And like obviously the soundtrack as well, really, really special. It's one that I've purchased on Bandcamp just because I really enjoyed the music that was created for the game. What can you tell us about that?
Oh, well, thank you for supporting the artist, Floex. Yeah, the music was obviously composed by Tomáš Dvořák, also known as Floex. He is probably most well known for the soundtrack to Machinarium. Before he also, yeah, the collaboration with Amanita, between Amanita and Floex started with Samoros 2 in 2005 or 6. So he's been like a very long-term collaborator for over 20 years now. He's done music for some of our other games as well, Samoros 3 and Pilgrims. Now he's working on another one. And Phonopolis, I think he had to go with a slightly different approach than he used to, because like the aesthetic of the game and the setting is a little more, yeah, it's definitely different than what he and anything he did before. Like there's this in the game, there's this emphasis on the world being this kind of a strange mix of old and new, you could say. There's also a little bit of Dadaism and absurdity in everything that happens in the city. And also in the city, the leader of the city has obviously banned all the old instruments, has basically banned all music. Everything old is, ugly, and we're not going to use that anymore. And so the music also had to reflect that. And like there's maybe like two, how could you say that, two different eras that also are reflected in the music, like the old era from before the leader took over the city. That's where the opera singer's song comes from as well, or the song that plays in the conspiracy apartment where Felix meets the three conspirators for the first time, which utilize, usual classical instruments, strings, and all that, and that sound like, yeah, I hate to use the word normal, but like normal music, let's say. And then you have the sort of new world, new era, where the leader has taken over, and it uses much more, mechanical sounds that you maybe sometimes wouldn't use or associate with like music or something more like noises. Yeah, the thing is, he wasn't really going for what people might expect, maybe like strictly a lo-fi quality of the sound, instruments that you would maybe typically associate with like um, socialist period or something like that. But he was, for example, playing around with the sound quality of things. For example, running them through like an old tape recorder. Like he would make a piece of music, a little stem, and then he would run it through the tape recorder, which adds a really sort of a unique texture that would also be difficult to replicate with like just digital tools. Although it's becoming more and more possible nowadays with, yeah, digital tools are getting really good at like emulating and simulating things. And he also implemented like lots of noises that maybe you wouldn't typically associate with like making music, but he utilized them in really, I would say, creative way. I think that's also one of the things that the team discussed with him, and by the team I mean the three creators that I mentioned before, because one of their influences or inspirations was Luigi Russolo, who was a futurist back in the day, and he is probably widely regarded as some sort of a noise music pioneer, you could say. And he was one of those guys who sort of suppressed, or yeah, went against all that music meant at the time. And he was sort of more into making mechanical noises and sort of try to make music that would come from, yeah, mechanical noises in general is something you would hear outside, uh, that you wouldn't probably perceive as music at all, but he had this very sort of different vision and idea of what music could be. He also, yeah, he was also the inventor of these like boxes that I can't remember the name of really, but you will be able to look them up, I'm sure, when you look up Luigi Russolo. One of the first images would probably be with those boxes, and they would have these handles that you could turn, and yeah, they were designed to make these really really sort of strange noises that would remind you of like the noise that you would hear outside on the streets or something like that. That was one of the inspirations for how the city would sound. But FlowX being FlowX, he will never go for just the most obvious solution, or the most obvious path. He's like very, I think, sophisticated in the way he does things, and always looks for like new creative ways to do things. And yeah, I think there isn't a soundtrack or music that sounds like Phonopolis. That would. There's obviously lots of dystopian works, lots of dystopian movies, or even games that are also set in like dystopian societies, dystopian cultures, under totalitarian rule or anything, something like that. But none of them really sound like Phonopolis to me at least. At the same time, it really works in the game. At least in my opinion, I can hardly imagine the game having a different sort of music. And he also did a really good job, I think, capturing the contrast that I probably mentioned at the beginning of the interview between this like absurdity and darkness of the environment with this like playfulness and again absurdity of the world and what's happening in this city. Yeah.
One of the things I really appreciated about the music was like when I was stuck on a puzzle and I was, just staring at the screen, pondering what I needed to do. The music was just there in the background and it gave me something to concentrate on while I was thinking and kind of enjoy because of the way in which it was made. And they've got such catchy beats to them. And like some of the tracks are they kind of loop. They kind of have the same kind of music motifs going through the whole track. And there may not be a lot going on, but in some of them, there is a lot going on. And in some of them, they're a lot more subtle. I found that they never really got on my nerves, like in some other puzzle games that can happen. I've been known to turn the music off because I just couldn't concentrate on the puzzle I was trying to do because the music was grating too much. This was the opposite in Phonopolis, where I kind of magnetized more to the music while I was trying to figure out a puzzle. And because of the way in which the tracks are being made, it just helped me concentrate more. And that's one of the biggest things that I really appreciated about the soundtrack.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that also took a little bit of tuning. There were definitely places that could get a little tiny bit irritating after, being stuck on the screen for a while. But again, FlowX was always really good at figuring out what's the issue and sort of adjusting the music to make sure it doesn't ever get annoying. He's also got a really good ear for like making catchy beats and catchy melodies. So yeah, it's really, really good to have him on board.
The soundtrack makes for great backing music for work. It's been great for that as well. So
absolutely, yeah. I've got a few favorites on the soundtrack, definitely.
So what's next for Phonopolis? Is it console ports?
We haven't made any announcements yet, but yeah, we've been very vague about the plans for the future. Like with most of our games in the past, we've usually wanted to bring them to as many players and to as many platforms as possible. So that the intention is the same for Phonopolis at the moment. But yeah, here we're gonna have to make you wait a little more for like an official confirmation for anything. But it's definitely coming to some more platforms. Right now, we're still working on updates of the PC version. One of the main plans at the moment is adding Czech voiceover with a Czech actor, and that should come within a month from now, no later than that, I hope. So yeah, that should be fun. And obviously, us coming from the Czech Republic, it's sort of it's a must to to have a Czech voiceover in the game. So yeah, working on that now.
Will that come with English subtitles?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You will be able to switch, the text and the audio separately in the game, so you can give it a try with English subtitles if you want.
No, because it just seems quite appealing to try and replay the game, but with the Czech narrator, but with English subtitles. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, I think it can be fun, and it will also be a slightly different experience, I think, because for the Czech voiceover, we went with his name is Mira Zabičar, and he's like a theater actor, professional actor, and Joe Etchison, who did the English version, the original version, he's not really a professional actor. So it's two quite or very different approaches, in fact. And with the Czech one, it got a slightly more. It feels a little more like theater, really. And I think both of them work really well, and both of them are slightly different. And I think that that makes it cool in a way that maybe it's worth replaying just for different voiceovers.
Yeah, no, it's really appealing to me to experience that. Like when you play a game from Japan and you've got the option to play in Japanese. That's normally my more go-to option.
Yeah.
Than having the English dub over the top. So I'd like to try that. I'd like to experience that in Phonopolis with a Czech narrator. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, no, not much time from now, I think. Like we have made we have finished all the recording sessions, so now it's just just quote unquote implementation. But yeah, we've already got some of the levels done, and it's sounding pretty nice.
Well, I hope the game does eventually make it to the Switch, because I think that will be a really great home for the game. I know I played Phonopolis on my Steam Deck, and it makes for a great handheld game, but I can imagine it being on a Switch 2 screen would really elevate the game. I think it would look really beautiful on that screen. So fingers crossed that you guys can make that happen one day.
I hope so.
Yeah. And just to finish, I like to ask this for all my interviewees, and that is, what one word would you use to describe Phonopolis?
Wow, that's a hard one, isn't it? Beautiful. I don't know. This is the first word that came to mind. Might not be a very original answer, but it's probably how I feel about the game the most. Phonopolis is one of those games that sparks curiosity from its originality, and it was fascinating to learn more on its incredible journey. If you would like to learn more on this journey, you can watch some documentaries that the team made on the game's development. I'll make sure to leave a link in the show description for you in case you do. Phonopolis is out now on PC, and you can grab it from Steam for $19.99. I hope this conversation has spurred you on to consider purchasing or wishlisting it. I'll also leave a link to the Steam page in the show description, just in case you want to do either. I'd also like to thank Lukáš for his generosity and his time in coming on to the show. It was a real treat to be able to speak to him about the development of Phonopolis. Please make sure you go and follow the Phonopolis' official account on BlueSky to keep yourself up to date with the game. And before I leave you, I would just like to remind you all that we have a Discord server where you can chat to the So Many Games crew and other like-minded people on video games, life and our work. We'd love for you to be a part of our community, so do come along and say hello and let us know what you've been playing. Also, don't forget to check out somanygames.co.uk, which is full of amazing reviews, articles and interviews. And please stick around to the very end of the podcast outro to catch some messages from some of our fellow creator friends. All that's left for me to say is to thank you for listening, and until next time, please take care out there and happy gaming.
You ever notice how some games don't need 100 hours to leave a mark?
Absolutely. I'm Michael.
And I'm Marcus. We're the host of Tiny Game Chronicles, a podcast that celebrates games that are small in scope, but huge in heart.
Every other week, we dive into games that you can finish in a few hours, but think about for days after.
We've been exploring these hidden gems, and every time it feels like uncovering something extraordinary.
So whether you're short on time or just love discovering new worlds, join us.
Listen to Tiny Game Chronicles on your favorite podcast app, or catch us on YouTube.
Tiny Game Chronicles, where every other week we discuss games that are quick plays,
but epic journeys.
Do you find yourself playing older games and wishing that there were new discussions about those games? Enter Tales from the Backlog. Hi, I'm Dave Jackson, and on each episode, I'm joined by a guest to break down those games that may be stuck in your ever-expanding backlog. Each episode looks at one game in depth, focusing on mechanics, story, music, and other aspects with no spoilers until a clearly marked spoiler wall in the middle. If you've played the game, go ahead and climb that spoiler wall and enjoy in-depth story discussions, and if not, jump out when we warn you and maybe go play that game for yourself. We have over 100 episodes in the feed, everything from Disco Elysium to Tunic to discussion episodes about how to get into horror games, and if games actually need to be fun, or if they have more to offer. I guarantee that there's something in there for everybody. Once again, that's Tales from the Backlog, available wherever your podcasts are found.